Hello everyone, Earth.Otherwise here with my first Let's Analyze video, where, according to the rules laid down in the Rules of Let's Analyze video, which I posted a week or two ago, we will look at a game that I have done a blind run for and ask and answer several questions in hopes of understanding how the game functions as a work of art. This is not a review. I will not be talking about my opinions of the game, or whether I believe what it's doing is good or bad, only what can be gleaned from an as objective a point of view as possible. So, on to the first questions. What, at its core, are the mechanics of Thea? It took me a little bit of thinking, but at its core, the game is about choosing the correct character to perform an action. We see this in the combat, where you choose which characters move into the fray and which characters support. We see this in the ability to send any character out to perform quests, hoping that they have the skills to complete said quests. And we see this in resource gathering and crafting, where we must assign specific characters to gather, craft, or build depending on their stats. Now, what is possible with these mechanics? Well, given certain stats and game maps, you can have games like XCOM, where the position and equipment of a specific character can mean life or death for your entire team, or Age of Empires, where if you have an army of cavalry, it can be countered with a force of pikemen. The statistics aren't necessarily what is important, but how these statistics are used in the game. Are you putting them directly against the enemy, or is there room to maneuver in such a way to make your stats more or less effective? You will notice that, unlike many games where you have to choose the character with the correct skill, there is little to no random elements in this game, meaning that your strategies will work perfectly if you understand the possibilities of your enemy. The strategic layer is clearly quite important to this game, in that instance, as it has what I call pure strategy under imperfect knowledge. As an example, chess has perfect strategy under perfect knowledge, and XCOM has imperfect strategy under imperfect knowledge. Playing Age of Empires with Fog of War turned off is an example of imperfect strategy under perfect knowledge. With the perfect strategy model, it means that this game wants you to think carefully about each move and, hopefully, execute your strategy perfectly, resulting, again hopefully, in victory. The inputs do not hamper you in this pursuit, though they are novel, as you must drag portraits into and out of position, rather than clicking them as in other games. This lends the games a sense of tactility that other such games lack. It feels like you are dragging cards out of your hand in a card game and placing them on the table, rather than telling a person or AI to do something and then relying on the character to do it. Of course, this means that the areas that you are dragging them to need to be large so that the player does not place them in the incorrect location, which means that there is no perfect use of space. However, they do use the space that they have to exemplify one of their strengths. Cards and portraits are filled with what looks like hand-drawn artwork, reminding me of Dungeons & Dragons and player-drawn character portraits. Interspersed in the choose-your-own-adventure portions of the quests, there is well-colored and voice-acted scenes that can help to immerse the player in the feeling of sitting at a table with a dungeon master playing a tabletop RPG. One of the weaknesses that shines through is the fact that the player is not told how the stats of their characters interact with the systems of the world, meaning that a game all about managing people makes the task of choosing which person to use more difficult. Another weakness is, perhaps, that the game feels like a tabletop RPG when the story is about being weak and powerless with enemies all around you. You do not feel like you are surrounded by enemies or that you are particularly weak. As this is the beginning of the game, you start with a total of 10 characters, which is 9 more than you start with in most tabletop RPGs, so you are actually doing pretty well for yourself. The only thing that tells you that you are weak is the story. This game could just as easily be about a new god rising to power as an old god, a beaten god, and you would not know the difference. But will these strengths and weaknesses be seen by the target audience? With the tabletop RPG inspiration, the strategy gameplay, and the fantasy setting, the game appears to be aiming for an oldie audience, people in their mid to late 20s to their mid 40s. This audience will sit down for a couple hours a week to play a game that gives them an interesting storyline to follow and interesting choices to make. With that in mind, will this game interest that audience and make them want to keep playing? Gameplay is turn-based, giving the player the ability to leave the computer at any time, and gives clear breaking-off points at the end of quests, meaning that the player can expect a new and interesting quest each time they sit down. Overall, it's my conclusion that this game will keep the audience that is striving to find that the game is striving to find entertained from beginning to end. Thank you for watching this, my first Let's Analyze video. Leave a comment if you agree or disagree with any of the points that I made, and I may respond to them in my comment response video. If you liked this video, leave a like, and if you want to see more, please subscribe. This is Earth.Otherwise, signing off.